Warning! The podcast that you are about to listen to may contain some subject matter that you find challenging or offensive.
Well, hey there, happy innovators. How are you all doing today? I hope that you're doing good. Before I got into my podcast today, I wanted to talk to you about what they call, like on YouTube and other social media platforms, like a call to action. Okay? I never have asked anyone ever for any money. Like, I don't have a Patreon page. I don't care about any of that stuff. Like, I will never ask you for your money. But if you listen to my podcast, okay, and if you like it, can you do me a favor and tell me that you like it? I know that there are people that listen to this podcast all the time, and a few of them comment on every single episode, okay? And I appreciate that. But if you are listening, this time, please, do me a favor. Help me out. Tell me that you like it. I know there's a lot more people listening to this podcast than my numbers reflect. That's a fact. I mean, it's abundantly clear to me at this point that YouTube and even other social media platforms are not necessarily fair. I think everybody knows that by now. And maybe even if this is your first podcast of mine that you're listening to and you do like it, like, say so. That's all. Okay? Don't give me your money or anything like that. You don't even have to subscribe to my channel. Right? I don't think it's asking too much. Is it? Also, on the same kind of front, I wanted to talk about these Wikipedia like labels that they're putting on the videos now, the censorship thing. If there's like an issue you're discussing in your podcast or on your YouTube channel or on your video, whatever it is, about topics that are controversial, Wikipedia will make sure that they stamp it with that, definition of what you're talking about, like what they say the definition is. And I don't know about you guys, but I think that is just the absolutely stupidest thing that anybody could do. It's like putting that PMRC warning on albums. Do you remember that back in the day when the PMRC was, the Parental Music Resource Center or something, and they were, putting a warning label on record albums from rap groups or rock groups or heavy metal groups that, they thought the lyrical content was, inappropriate and, needed to be censored. Like, the parents needed to be warned that this record they're buying for their kid has got these bad words on it or these bad themes or something like that, or bad images even, right? It did the exact opposite of what the PMRC had anticipated it would do. The idea was to kind of discourage parents from buying those records for their kids, or from the kids buying the records for themselves, okay? But everybody knows now that in reality, it sold more records. Like, people didn't want to not buy the record because there was a sticker on it. Usually it became something that everybody would like look at and like either look right through it, and buy the record anyway, or they would buy it because the sticker was on the record, And I see this happening again on YouTube with their videos. It's ridiculous. It's a form of like propaganda. I mean, it's actually what it is. It's propaganda. Like, if someone wants to talk about the flat earth theory or something like that, just talk about an idea. Just talk about it. They'll stamp it with those warnings. Like, here's the definition of what flat earth is. And to me, it's laughable. It's also like really stupid. Like, and what's even funnier about all this kind of stuff, okay, to me, is that I can talk about flat Earth on my video, okay, and I am algorithmed so far out that I don't even get a warning label on my videos. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty funny. I don't quite know what to make of all that, you know, and I think different things about it from time to time, but I have to laugh. Anyway, so with like the pipe choir, the PC3, the music, that kind of stuff, and even my normal podcast, you know, I will, you know, put advertising on it, okay? And I do make a little bit, I mean, really a little bit of money from that. Not enough to even talk about, really. But with the Mike TV thing in particular, I recently got shut down with that. You know, the YouTube changed the rules, and I'm not allowed to even play the song and let the artist get paid for me playing their song in my Mike TV thing or whatever. That really kind of chapped my ass. To be honest with you, it did. You know, it doesn't make any sense. I'm advertising the music. I'm doing it for free. I'm not making any money off of it. I'm doing it strictly for entertainment purposes, yet I'm not allowed to anymore, okay? That kind of stuff bothers me. So, having explained that to you in this podcast, you know, help me out, okay? If you really care at all about me doing this podcast, then you gotta let me know. You gotta let me know. And like I said, I'm not talking to the handful of people, you know who you are, that comment on everything I do. Like, I think that's fantastic, and I totally appreciate it. And, you know, in some ways I kind of rely on it a little bit, you know, to know that I'm not talking into like a vacuum, that there's somebody there and they're listening and they respond to what I'm saying, you know. And I get it too. Like, you know, my episodes of this podcast are not always magnificent, you know. Sometimes they're mundane, or they don't make sense, or they're weird, or, you know, whatever. The list is long of adjectives that I could attach to the past, you know, 121 podcasts that I've made. But it's not always about whether, you know, something is really, really exciting or not. You know, it's just me talking. That's really all it is. If you are listening to this podcast and you do like it, then just let me know. Can you do that for me? Now, I don't know about you, but I'm going to get a sip of my coffee now because, once again, I got a nice piping hot cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and I'm going to have a sip. So I suggest, if you're listening, now's the time to grab your cup and maybe take a sip with me. Cheers. And here I go. Wow, this coffee is so good today, too. Oh, my gosh. I mean, it's always good, but some days it's better than others, you know? Like, it's really, really good. Today is one of those days. Hang on. I'm going to take another sip. Okay. So, where was I? Oh, you know, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more today about that idea I was talking about in the thought experiment number 6. I was talking about, you know, mud flood and Antiquitech and all that stuff, you know, and I wanted to continue along that thought because I've come to some other conclusions about things. I'm not 100% sure if I'm correct, you know. Disclaimer, you know. It's just ideas and theories and things I think about that might be possible, okay? And, having this explanation, okay, of mud flood and Antiquitech and this forgotten history or this hidden history, possibly, that we all share, sometimes the lemons kind of line up, like I'll make a connection. Like, I wonder if that has something to do with this way over here, What do I mean by that? Well, I'll let you know. It's like, for years and years and years, I've been hearing about Indian reservations in the American Southwest. We all know the stories, subjugated people, forced to live on reservations, and they were really kind of forced off of their land. And one might think, like, why is that such a big deal that they were forced off of their land? And they were conquered. That's what happens. I've heard that before. But I think that the reason why that is particularly tragic, and why the Native American Indian population in the United States is so controversial, or what's happened to them is so controversial and kind of sad, is because I believe it's possible. Okay, it's possible that the reason that the Native American Indians don't want to leave the land that they're on is because their ancestors are buried in that land. And we think, oh, like they dug some graves and they that's where their ancestors were buried. Okay. But I kind of get the idea or the impression, just based on some of the evidence that I've seen, that cataclysm I was talking about that happened in our history, you could look at a map of the globe, the world, whether it's flat or round, I don't know. But if you look at like the American Northwest, Southwest, and then I think in Russia, the eastern part of Russia, southeastern part of Russia, you can see that the land in those two areas is so different from everywhere else on the planet. Like, something happened there. And maybe that something that happened was a cataclysm. And maybe that cataclysm killed a lot of the ancestors of these Native American people. Like, that's why they want to stay there. They'll live on a mountain, or they'll live near a mesa, and it'll be a sacred space, and they'll have ceremonies there. Okay? And it's not because a couple of their great-grandfathers are buried there. It's because thousands and thousands of people may have died in that spot, and their bodies are still buried there, all these years later, from this gigantic cataclysm that happened. That may sound a little out there to you, and maybe I'm way off. I don't know. How do I know? I'm not an archaeologist. I'm not Native American Indian. I don't know for sure, but I get the impression, especially after watching this episode on YouTube of that guy Peter Santinello. He's this guy who travels around the world, really around America now, like lately, and he'll go into like a random culture somewhere in the United States, and a small pocket of people in one small area, and he'll walk around with them, and he'll talk to them about where they live, how they live. It's like the future. If you ask me, it's like the future of news reporting. Like, this guy is on the cutting edge of that front. Just like Joe Rogan is on the cutting edge of podcasting, this Peter Santinello guy is really way ahead of the curve when you watch some of his productions. They're fantastic. And, he talks specifically, okay, he talks in some of his episodes to these Native American people that live on the land. They still live there. They have legends and myths about the area where they're at, and they'll say things like the aliens came down, or they'll say, there's a supernatural force that's here, or there's an energy here on this mountaintop, and we'll come here and we'll be here when we have our ceremonies, to honor our ancestors or whatever it is they're doing. And it's like, we think to ourselves like, oh, wow, they're really superstitious people, and oh, isn't that interesting that they think their ancestors are still here, But my contention is, at least at this point right now, is that they're not telling you a story. They're not telling you a myth. They're telling you what happened. They are actually telling you that there was a cataclysm and they were wiped out, and the people that remained were the people that survived. And there weren't many. And they would live on this, mountain that used to be a dwelling, like a castle, a place where people lived. And it got annihilated by some kind of something, right? And the survivors and the people that made it through that cataclysm, that small little pocket of people that were left alive, stayed on the land. They stayed near that mountain that their ancestors died in. And their ancestors' bodies are still there. And why do I think that? I'll tell you. I just saw this thing about the Grand Canyon, okay? And when you look at the Grand Canyon through the lens of like modern science and like what we've been taught, we're told that what happened with the Grand Canyon was like wind and erosion and water from like an ice age or something, okay? And at face value, that's what we're told. That's what we believe in. Okay, I've never been to the Grand Canyon. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know. I know what people tell me, okay? And that's when you look at it through that lens, okay? But if you look at the Grand Canyon, something like the Grand Canyon, but in particular the Grand Canyon, through the lens of maybe there was a huge cataclysm that happened. This place got zatzed by something, just absolutely fried by something. And when you look at the Grand Canyon through that lens, and that some of this stuff got cooked out, some of this rock, literally rocks and bricks and things like that, were melted from this event, okay? When you look at it through that lens, you can see it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's one of those things. I am sorry. I do not believe anymore that the Grand Canyon was made with wind and erosion and ice from an ice age that melted, and look at those rock formations. And you can see how the water was flowing. It's like, no, I don't think you see how water was flowing. I think you're seeing how melted rock was flowing. That's what we're looking at. You can literally see the strata, the layers of, building, a constructed building that was melted and cooked out. That's what it looks like to me and to a lot of other people now. It's fascinating. And, what's even crazier about that idea, okay, is, there are reports. I don't know how valid they are. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I don't know. But there are reports that they're finding inside the Grand Canyon, like some of these caves that just, miraculously lead into these tunnels and these chambers. And what? I thought it was just a mountain. What happened? There's like tunnels throughout the entire Grand Canyon. And, some of them are filled with Egyptian relics. Like Egypt was there. Think about that. Egypt was in America, in the Americas, like pharaohs and, whatever, this culture that lived here. And you don't ever hear anything about it, really. It's kind of swept under the rug or not talked about, or it's like a theory or a myth, or it's not true. That's what we're told. But what a strange story to just make up, right? That they found, a tunnel that led to a chamber in the Grand Canyon, and there's a bunch of Egyptian mummies in there. This actually happened. Reportedly, that's what happened. Can you believe it? And doesn't that make sense? You have these people, the Native American people, and they have a culture, and it's rich and it's beautiful, and they did things a certain way, and we're kind of given this idea about this culture of people, not just one nation of Native American Indians, but all of them, that they were somehow like these primitive people, and they had like sticks, and they would tie sticks together, and they would live in like a teepee, and that's what they did, but what if there's a deeper history there, and their ancestors weren't living in teepees? Their ancestors were building these massive structures, highly sophisticated, along the lines of the pyramids at Giza and that kind of stuff, right here in the United States. Okay, now you don't have to take my word for it. You can look this stuff up and you'll find some stuff, if you can still find it, because they're burying that stuff now. They are washing the internet of information about stuff like that. So you may not be able to find it anymore, but I would imagine that if I'm able to find it, then you could too. And that just because something is on the internet doesn't mean it's true. So I know that, okay? I know that. But I'm not so much convinced by only what I'm being shown. I'm being convinced about what I remember and what I was told and what I was taught and what did I see, and okay, maybe there's something to this. Look at those rock formations in the Grand Canyon. Look at them. Now you can look at them, like I said, you can look at them through the lens of the science book that you had in high school and what they told you it was, and what scientists will insist that it is right now. They'll say this is from wind and erosion. That's it. Okay? Nothing else is possible. Well, I don't know. Maybe there's this alternate idea. Maybe there were structures there that would blow your mind. That were along the lines of something like Notre Dame Cathedral. Massive structures though, beautiful, and these people were probably much more advanced, or could have been much more advanced than we're led to believe. I think it's possible. Certainly fun to think about, that idea. Hang on, I'm going to get some coffee. Hang on. I get to talking and, your mouth dries out. Hang on, I'm going to get another sip. Okay, so I was talking about, this idea of alternate history, and maybe this conclusion that I'm coming to about the Native American tribes that live in the American Northwest and the American Southwest, out that way, maybe they're there because their ancestors used to run that place. I mean, it was not, a primitive culture we're talking about. We're talking about a civilization that was wiped out. That's what I'm kind of starting to think has happened. And, it doesn't matter if I'm wrong, and it doesn't matter if I'm right. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what I believe. It doesn't. It's just an idea. It's just me expressing a thought. And you may be like, you're crazy, you're full of shit, there's nothing to that, that's the wrong story, this is what happened, just like the history books said. Okay, maybe. I'll concede to that. I can do that. Because that's what I was taught, and that's what I was brought up with. But I've lived enough life to know, at this point, that things are not always what they seem. Okay? And just because you're being taught something as fact doesn't mean that it's a fact. Especially when it comes to the history of the world. Okay? We are at the mercy of what? Scholars, and people that study it. But what are they studying? And what books are they studying from? And how accurate is the information they're studying from? I don't know. And I'm certainly not here to cancel their careers, because they're wrong. I don't know. But to me, at this point in my life, it seems a lot more probable to me that when we look at something like the Grand Canyon or the Devil's Tower, they say it was like a tree trunk. I mean, that's what the Indian people say. That's a tree trunk. It's not a mountain. It's a tree trunk. It's been cut off. And they claim the trees were really big. And we go, oh, that's a fairy tale. That didn't really happen. That's a myth. Well, I don't know. Look at it, You tell me. Doesn't that make sense? Like, what if that's a petrified tree stump? Like a massive, massive tree from a long time ago. Maybe there's a reason why these people will not leave that area. And it's sacred space, and it's fenced off, and it's private. You can't get there. You can't walk there because it belongs to them, and their ancestors are buried there. Actually, for some reason, it always kind of reminded me of the story of Moses. Moses was chosen by God to lead the Jewish people, and he died. He died before he got to the promised land, right? You probably know the story. And what a lot of people don't realize is that according to the story in the Bible and the story of Moses, okay, his body was buried somewhere where it would never be found by anybody. Okay? And an angel, Saint Michael, the archangel, according to the story, is the angel that took the body of Moses and he hid it, buried it in a place that nobody would ever find it. Okay? Now, it's kind of weird, but later on in the Bible, okay, this is just a connection I made, okay? At some point in the Bible, I forget where it was, but somebody is walking through the desert. Okay? They're walking through an area. There's nobody around. Okay? The middle of nowhere. Okay? And as this person is walking, they're confronted by an angel. And the angel tells them to step back because they are about to walk on a sacred grave, like a sacred space where somebody is buried. They don't say it's Moses, okay, but it's in the Bible. I mean, it's there that this angel was telling them, get out of here. You're not allowed to walk here. And if you do walk here, you're not going to survive. I'm going to erase you. Get out of here. Right? So I always kind of wondered, was that Moses? Did somebody actually stumble across the spot where Moses was buried? I don't know. It's like weird, and you probably don't care, but some of you might, and some of you might remember what I'm talking about. And I think it's kind of interesting. I think it's along the same lines as this idea with the Native American Indians in America, that maybe, those mountains that they live on or they live near, and we are not allowed to go there. Like normal Caucasian white people can't just wander onto the reservation and walk up to their sacred spaces. They'll make sure you don't get there. Okay? They guard those places. And I just wonder if underneath the ground, if you were to do like a underground radar to see what's down there, we may be stunned at what we see in the American North and Southwest. Like, we might be freaked out by what they found, and we may never be allowed to know what they find. That idea that there were Egyptian mummies found in the Grand Canyon. People are like, oh, that's not true. And it's so easy to disprove it. You just, if it was real, why wasn't it world news or, whatever? Well, you can do your own, deducing on that front, right? I mean, you can think about it. And I don't know, what would it mean to the world if we found out for sure, without question, that there were Egyptian mummies and Egyptian civilizations living all the way over here in America, Think about that. What would that mean? It challenges everything. It flies right in the face of science, doesn't it? Like, you would have to question everything, right? Like, rethink everything if Egyptian mummies are buried in American soil. What the hell are we talking about? What is going on? And before I end this podcast, I'll mention one more thing that makes me think, okay? Now, I'm not sure, okay? I'm just thinking. I'm not sure. But, over in Europe, in Italy, I believe, they have these things called the catacombs, okay? And we're taught that those are Christians that were hiding underground, okay? Hiding from persecution, and they were martyred and they were killed, okay? And that might be the case. I don't know. But when you look at the photographs of those catacombs, okay, they're like tunnels that are literally filled with human bones, okay? I mean, so many human skeletons that you can't count that high. That's how many are down there, right? Well, one, why are they down there? Okay, that's the first question. Oh, they were hiding down there? Okay, well, it didn't work out too well because they all died. Okay? What if the catacombs in Italy, are actually the remains of people that died in that same cataclysm, where they were down there in there, or maybe at the time of that cataclysm, what we now know as the catacombs, like down under the ground, maybe at that time they were above the ground, and the reason that they're underground is because they got buried. Think about that. If that's true, and if that's possible, there could be whole civilizations of people still living underground. Think about that. I mean, if city after city was buried, okay, under, 40 feet of mud or 20 feet of mud, well, what if the buildings survived? And what if the people who knew where the buildings were, the ones who made it through the cataclysm, what if they started to dig and they found that place again? And hey, look, there's still rooms here, and it's still a usable space. It's still the temple that we used to be in, or it's still the place that we used to live. It's just buried under 20 feet or 40 feet of dirt now because of this cataclysm, right? Think about that. I mean, it's just fascinating to think about. And, every year, it seems, they find something. Archaeologists were digging, and they found a thing. They found something way down under the ground. Like, what the hell is it doing way down there? Well, maybe at one time, it was on the surface. You know what I mean? Think about that. Yeah, it might be too far out there for you. Okay? Maybe. To me, it's not. To me, I don't know. I can kind of look at it and think, that kind of makes sense. Maybe. Don't you think? I don't know. So, happy innovators. I'm going to let you go here because I want to get on to some other things today, but I'm keeping to my word about making this podcast. But I really need from you guys something. Got to give me something if you're listening. Every one of you that's listening to this right now, if you listen and you do like it and you're interested and it's entertaining to you, then just click that little thumbs up thing, that you like it. That's all. You don't even have to say anything, but if you're generous enough, maybe you'll comment, right? So, anyway, there's my blathering for today, my happy innovators. And remember, folks, if you want to keep what you've got to give it away. Take it easy. Okay, happy innovators, I've got some music for you at the end of the podcast, as usual. I'm going to share with you 3 different songs today. The first one I'm going to share with you is a version of the song Sedusa, like a techno version of it that I did a long time ago. I had forgotten all about it, but I did work hard on it, and it sounds okay. So I'm going to share that with you. I'm also going to share with you a song that you've probably never heard before. It's a song I wrote a long time ago, like back in 1992. It's a song called Rivers Full of Joy. And just for one reason or another, I never did anything with it. I just have it. I've had it for a long time. So I'm going to share that with you. And then I'm also going to share with you a song called Alms, A-L-M-S. It's a song I've done many different versions of. It's probably a song that you're not familiar with. It is a song that I'm redoing for the new Pipe Choir album that's coming out very soon. And it's another like techno version of this song. I have so many different versions. I have a heavy metal version. I have a acoustic guitar version. I have this techno version you're about to hear. So without further ado, here we go. Enjoy the music. Sedusa, the techno version, a song called Rivers Full of Joy that you've never heard before, and Alms, a song that you've probably never heard before. Check it out.
Come on.
rivers full of joy.
I'm following the light. Like the creatures move through the sea. And every word I breathe is my burnt offering. And every word I share, it's filled with love, love, love. Am I the man you want me to be? I'm under ancient skies. I'm over ancient seas. And every word I breathe, it's my burnt offering. And every word I share, it's filled with love, love, love. From deep inside of me, it's my burnt offering. It's only all of you. It's my burnt offering.
Okay, I'm going to do a little section here for a longtime listener and dedicated fan to Pipe Choir and Pipe Choir Records. He goes by the name of Lennox, and I asked him to do me a favor on a video idea that I had, and he said yes, so this is my thank you to him. Lennox, you had asked me a question about the antennas, you know, and if I was going to do a description of the Mira 1 album, you know, to give you an explanation for this antenna idea, okay? So, really quick, I'm just going to mention it here for you, and I'll do a longer, you know, explanation for it, I'm sure, when I do the Mira 1 album description. But for right now, I can just say to you this, that for one reason or another, okay, as an artist, me, you know, I don't know why, but for some reason I've always had an affinity for antennas. I think that they're cool. I don't know why, but I do. And I've sung about them. I have a song called Antenna. I have a couple of songs called Antenna, actually. They're both very different. and you might hear one of those in the future. But I've always had this like idea, I guess, in my mind that like spiritually, when we pray to God or, you know, like that kind of thing, that we're communicating much like an antenna, you know, like sometimes we can pray without saying any words. You just think things, you have thoughts and you think them, and they transmit out into the cosmos, and God hears you, you know, that kind of idea. Like we are like antennas to God. Okay, that's one interpretation of it. Also, I think more with Mirror One, the idea is to be going along with this theme of telecommunication, you know, transmissions of data, and you know, especially like in the arena of warfare, you know, signals and you know, secret codes and signs and things that are transmitted over radio waves, you know, to soldiers on the field and that kind of stuff. That's really what I'm going after, kind of like with Mirror One, that idea, exploring the idea of radio communication, okay, transmissions, got it? But also, too, at the same time, I'm referring to this idea of Antiquitech and these old buildings like Notre Dame Cathedral, you know, possibly being these antennas that were extracting energy out of the ether, like out of the atmosphere. I think that kind of thing is so cool and so fascinating. Like this idea that an old cathedral may have been at one time in history used as an energy source, a place where energy is drawn from. Okay, and that's a long, convoluted story and explanation, but as I've explained in my Antiquitech podcast, and as I explained in the Thought Experiment number 6 episode of the Singularity podcast, those two podcasts kind of talk about this idea, and it's something that I'm just really interested in. Okay, so when you're listening to Mirror One, especially that little snippet I gave you at the beginning of the album, the opening of it, you know, you're hearing radio waves. You're hearing this communication that's not quite clear. You know, that's what I'm going for. So there you go, Lennox. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your questions. But most of all, thank you for being a loyal listener and, you know, giving me a reason to do some of this stuff. You know, thank you for that. Your support means everything to me. I get a thrill out of it. You know, I'm happy that you're interested. So thank you. All right. I'll see you next time. Peace out.